24-16, the final score. The Tennessee Titans get it done on the road. Preseason game number 2, the win for the two-tone blue over the Minnesota Vikings. Alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. This is Titans Talk Back on 104.5. The Zone. Joseph Bonanno, our producer. 615-737-1045 is the number you dial to talk to Joseph and get in on the conversation, giving us your reactions to what we saw from the Titans' second preseason outing of 2023. We are, of course, brought to you by Lee Company, all you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. KD, Titans drop one in Chicago, and after a week of joint practices in Minnesota, get out with a win. Malik Willis going the distance today at quarterback.
Going the distance. I mean, I've been saying it since we signed D-Hop. That's been the topic of town. How far can he help this receiving core, this offense? He's an explosive player for his whole career. Him coupled with Derrick Henry. How will Tannehill bounce back? All those things are important. But at the end of the line, your success offensively is determined by the ability for the offensive line to protect and move the front. And today, that offensive line, both of them, created running lanes, got to the second level, was physical, no big penalties. They gave up a couple sacks, but one of those, I feel like that was on Malik. He made a great play, broke a few tackles. After you break one, you're not going anywhere, son. Throw the ball 30 yards downfield out of bounds. And so, again, that was a sack that was avoidable, but it goes on their stat line. That offensive line today showed up. And that, if they can get that kind of work from their offensive line this season, man, they're going to be hard to deal with for everybody in the National Football League because they play so physical all the time. Defensive line, man, sacks. Caleb Murphy had 2 of them. Weaver had a sack. I mean, they were physical. Again, the football, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, make the fundamental. You know what I mean? And when it comes down to it, you have to be able to control the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. And today, that's what the Titans did. Defensive line was physical and great. Tierre Tart, he was just a man amongst boys. That offense and defensive line today was fun to watch. And it just opened up things for Spears and Chestnut and even Malik, who had a lot of running yards tonight. So, hats off to the offense and defensive line today. We'll get into Malik Willis. I'm sure people want to hear about that. We'll talk about his stat line. It was some ebbs and flows, some ups and downs, like a roller coaster with him. But I will say this about Malik Willis, opposite of last week, when they needed a play to seal the deal, he was able to do that this week. He was able to process, get better from one snap to the next. I think he really has to watch some film and really be critical of himself and his footwork. The pick and a couple of other bad throws where he just didn't seem balanced in his throw, kind of thrown against his base. He just kind of was throwing it up there, let it linger a little bit. There's a couple drop balls by his receivers, but he could have helped the situation with a more accurate throw, but they still should have caught him. But overall, a win's a win. You got to win. Preseason game. You saw some good things, some things you can build on. And now a big test coming in this week.
So, obviously, more of a sample size from Malik today. All 4 quarters. Played all but, 2 snaps at quarterback when emergency QB Mason Kinsey came in. Great stuff from Mike Heath and Coach Mack on the Titans radio broadcast talking about Mason hadn't played quarterback since his 8th grade year of middle school. He apparently tried out to be the quarterback of his high school football team's triple option offense, but just didn't win the job. Mason Kinsey getting that chance to take snaps at quarterback in the NFL. Pretty cool. But Malik Willis today. Will Levis, if you had not caught on to this or seen the information coming out pregame, Levis picked up something at joint practice in Minnesota on Thursday, left with all we have right now is what's been reported as a lower body injury. He was out there today. He was warming up. He was dressed out, but it was reported before the game that he was not going to play. He ended up not playing. Malik Willis, 10 of 17, 85 yards, a touchdown, an interception, ran the ball 11 times for a total of 91 yards, averaged 8.3 yards per carry, a long of 26 yards. So all that to say, KD, a much more wide-ranging performance today from Malik Willis, right, versus what we saw in Chicago.
I think so. I think one thing I will say, as you read that stat line, 11 carries, 91 yards, he seemed to be more decisive in when to tuck and run than he was last week. Last week, I think you get into that whispers in your ear of, oh, you got to stay in the pocket, read the field, go through your progressions and things of that nature. So you almost lose sight of your instincts and your natural ability, which he can run. And he can extend drives. And today he ended a game with his legs by being decisive and pocket breaks down. He makes a big run there to seal the deal. So to me, that was the good part of his game. The bad part of his game was the technique and the fundamentals of it, as he missed several throws, including the one he got intercepted. That, to me, was just poor footwork. But ultimately, I think like I said last week, you're seeing a guy who seems to be more comfortable in his skin, who has been in the National Football League for a year and not feeling that I don't know, that pressure of having to be something you're not. I think he's starting to be a little more comfortable in his ability. He just got some fundamental flaws I feel like he needs to work on, and he'll be a pretty good. It's going to be hard for them to not give him that nod to be the number 2 spot. As a competitor, you hate for you to get a position based off of injury. But at the same time, it's a dog-eat-dog world, if I'm saying that right. I want to play too. I want this opportunity as well. So for Malik, this was a prime opportunity in the midst of a battle, as we all assume, and it's been presented to us, that he got an opportunity to kind of widen that gap between him and Levis a little bit. And I don't know, seemingly, I don't know how the rest of everybody feels like. I don't know if he did that completely just because it were some good things, but it wasn't like dynamic to the point like, oh, he is the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
615-737-1045 for you to join the conversation. You can also hang out with us on 1045 The Zone TV, the F&M Bank chat, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. If you would like to chime in, Scoop on the YouTube chat says Malik was a B-, grading Malik Willis's performance. Scoop says, loved how he was able to progress, and that's to your point. Shout out to the offensive line. That's from Scoop Richardson on YouTube. What'd you like better tonight, KD? Run blocking or pass protection from this group up front?
Oh, run blocking. I mean, it's just they protected well, don't get me wrong. But if you watch, there's 3-4 snaps in there. They're coming to my mind, and just watching them in unison, getting to the second level, getting to the linebacker, creating lanes. There's even a time they illustrated it as it was just a stalemate of a wash at the line of scrimmage, but they had body on body, so they couldn't make a play, and the running back was able to get through the hole, get through the lane. They created so many running lanes. Anytime you rush for over 200 yards in the National Football League, you're doing something right up front. Now, get me wrong, there's some natural ability that comes from the running backs. The first touchdown run by Spears where he leaps the guy. Now, that was instinctual. That should have been like 8, 9, 10-yard gain, but he makes it into a touchdown run. So, some of that is them, but he doesn't get to that level one-on-one with a safety if the offensive line does have everybody washed up. So, to me, I think today that the way they ran the football and the way they got to the next level, man, that is fun to watch and exciting to think about when you talk about Derrick Henry get behind that offensive line and what he's able to do in the National Football League. It's going to be rough on everybody if they play like this all year long.
Titans racked up 281 rushing yards.
I don't care when that is. A lot.
Net rushing tonight against that Vikings front.
That's a lot in high school in a wing team. I'm telling you.
That's a lot from a triple option at the high school level.
Come on, man.
You would know, Kevin Dyson. The Vikings, on the other hand, put up 91 in net rushing. So Titans, without a doubt, winning on the line of scrimmage. And that was a hot topic coming out of joint practices, KD, especially as it pertains to the Titans offense. Really, I think if you were listening to sports radio in Minnesota all week, you were talking about how the defense was winning. And if you were listening to sports radio in Nashville, Tennessee all week, you were hearing about how the Titans defense was winning in joint practice.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the Titans kind of win that battle at the line of scrimmage. But let's kind of compartmentalize this, if we could, and just talk about the first-team offensive line that we come away feeling pretty confidently about after just one series in Chicago, march right down the field, punch it in for a touchdown. They get 3 series tonight, able to trot back out there a couple of times after a couple of 3-and-outs to open things up. So first-team offensive line compared to the depth pieces that struggled in Chicago, how do you evaluate those separately?
I still think you look at how they are at the point of attack, whatever group. I mean, I realize Minnesota's depth as far as their defensive front might be a little less significant as maybe it was even last week. But maybe, I don't know. That in itself, I want to see assignment football, fundamentally football. How do they move their feet? How's their pad level? And are they able to get through the second level and put bodies and hands on people to create running space? And that's what I saw, whether it was that first group for their first, what were they in, about a first quarter-ish, something like that.
Right.
To
3 drives.
3 drives. And to the rest of the game, there didn't seem to be a dramatic drop-off. Matter of fact, in the second half, it seemed to pick up even more as far as creating space for Chestnut and Patrick and the guys that played late in the game, and Willis, that were able to run the football. So to me, it's when they do their grading, when they start watching film and they get their grade, you're looking at, okay, we're going to keep 9, maybe 10 guys. Who's grading higher? Because I felt like, from a layman's eyes, felt like they all played at a high level, which is good because now you are creating depth. Now you're not worried about, somebody goes down for a game or for a series, who's coming in, because it seemed, at least today, it seemed like they have good depth on the offensive and defensive lines, but we're talking offensive line right now, and it seemed like they have a lot of depth, which is what was a problematic concern going into the season. So it's hard. It was giving me hope in a lot of sense of what the season could potentially be, because I was worried about the offensive line. There's so many changes and so many things going on. It's like a makeshift offensive line, and yet they got it, at least today, they seem like they got it rolling. So, again, they got to – in the NFL is, what have you done for me lately? You got to reprove yourself, and you got to build on this. You got to be consistent. You're not saying you're going to dominate and have 200, almost 300 yards rushing every week, but there needs to be a little bit of consistency. So let's see what they do this Friday. Excuse me.
So of 17 pass attempts, not dropbacks, would be interested to see the exact number of dropbacks from Malik Willis tonight, because the Vikings got home twice, 2 sacks, only 2 QB hurries, and only 2 tackles for loss behind the line of scrimmage tonight from this Vikings front seven that didn't really play a lot of starters. The guys that were making noise, throughout those joint practices, Daniil Hunter, their $20 million a year man, did not play tonight. Neither did Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, and the like for the Titans. Did see a lot of Tier Tart, though, for talking about the flip side of that with the Titans front seven. I mean, he played over half the game.
Yeah. And he did what he's supposed to do when he's playing against backups.
Right. Yeah. he made Nick Mullins' life pretty rough there in the first half. Did Tier Tart.
Yeah, he and I was wondering why he was getting so many reps. And I said it last week. You asked me that question. I kind of liked getting my reps in the preseason. Gives me condition for the regular season. Now, I wasn't a fan of the 4 preseason games. I always felt like 2 was plenty, depending on how you spread those out. But with that being said, I wonder if it was one of those situations where you're like, man, I want to get some reps in, get my body condition, because he looks in season form. He's like he's ready to go.
I wonder if it had anything to do, total speculation by me, on Tier Tart getting removed from practice the other day and the reps that maybe he lost from. It was a relatively clean joint practice week, very productive week between Titans and Vikings. The only small hang-up was Tier Tart getting into it with Garrett Bradbury and maybe, swinging once or twice and getting tossed and having to watch the rest of practice in a T-shirt where the reports coming out of joint practice. So they got him a few extra snaps in there. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that did happen earlier this week.
Vrabel, he doesn't hold grudges or anything like that at all. He don't. No, not at all. Either way, you owe it to yourself. If you're on the field, you got to play at a high level, whether you were a Pro Bowl starter and they say, hey, you're playing 3 quarters in this preseason or not, you owe it to yourself and what's put on film to play at a high level, and he did that today. He did what he's supposed to do, regardless of the circumstances behind it. He played well. That's why I said that the defensive line, man, it was fun to watch them operate today. I feel like they dominated Minnesota's front. Now, again, we can go in and talk about it was their backups and things like that, but I'm saying it was backups versus backup, and it still felt like the Titans, that's where they won this game. In particular, it was a tight game right there until the end. I mean, it still was tight. I mean, 8-point game that's just a possession of a win. You know, if Titans don't close the deal in that last 5 minutes of the game, Minnesota gets the ball back. Who knows what happened? They go down, score, 2-point conversion. Now we're talking about overtime. So, you know, it still got to seal the deal, and that's what they were able to do today, especially up front.
615-737-1045 if you want to join the conversation. Your reactions to the Titans' 24-16 preseason win at the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure many of you were watching the Nashville Soccer Club game, Leagues Cup final, penalty shootout loss against Inter Miami. What a game that was. Plenty of watch parties happening around the Mid-State with both the Titans preseason matchup and the Nashville SC Cup final over at Geodis Park. Lionel Messi and all his friends with Inter Miami in Music City. Star-studded night over at Geodis Park. But was a good crowd up there in Minnesota. Some good crowds around the NFL preseason tonight. And maybe we'll get into some other preseason storylines happening around the league because a lot of starting quarterbacks playing tonight, KD. A lot of starting quarterbacks.
Which has not been the trend of late. And I'm telling you, I'm an advocate for that. Give you some reps, give some live reps against your other opponents when the lights are on. It's just something different than even practicing against another opponent. When you put the lights on and you actually put on the game uniform. I always liked it. I always liked getting a few reps. I always liked a few scrimmages, iron out some kinks, watch film, evaluate myself, watch my stands, how am I getting off, am I tilting my hat a little bit, giving some things away. You know, you always want to get better. And I enjoyed preseason. I didn't necessarily enjoy playing 4. I didn't like playing 4 games, but I did like getting out there and bumping heads a little bit. But so I'm happy to see the quarterbacks out there. It's just they're working with, some of them are working with new guys, some of them working with new coordinators, some are working with new teams. It's good to see some of these veterans out there. And you know what? From an offensive line standpoint, when you know you got your guy back there, I'm not saying they're not going to protect Malik Willis or any other backups that are playing live preseason, but there's something to say about Mahomes being in the game and you're an offensive lineman. We don't want him to get touched in the preseason, so they're going to be more seasoned and ready to go. You know, so there's something to say about that as well.
Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's just to name a few that were in action tonight around the NFL.
Yeah.
Preseason Week 2. 615-737-1045. It's Titans Talk Back, presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Bud is in Brentwood. Wants to chime in and chat with Dr. Kevin Dyson. What's up, Bud?
Hey, guys. Just want to give a shout-out to Dr. Dyson. Nashville loves you, big guy.
I appreciate it, man.
You bet. 8 wins, 8 losses in a row. Glad to get that nasty taste out of our mouth. I mean, I don't care if it's preseason. You know, guys, 8 losses in a row, enough already. So, bye-bye, John Robinson era. Welcome to the Rand Carthon era, and a win is a win. And just wanted to get your thoughts maybe on the job Carthon is doing. I think he's doing an excellent job. And look forward to each and every Sunday this fall in the Carthon era. Thanks, Kev.
Thanks, Bud.
Hey, you know, quiet is kept as this roster is being constructed. Of course, we got to remain to see, but seemingly right now, especially in the offensive defensive line, the depth that is seemingly sprouting up, he's doing a job finding talent. Now, you got to play the season, got to work itself out from week 1 to week 19 or 18, whatever it is, and how the season works out. And the same thing before him with Robinson, same thing before him. Like, you know, it's got to iron things out. There's going to be some hard decisions to be made. But right now, they look to have more depth than I think we anticipated this year. I think there were so many worries going into secondary, the linebacker position, maybe edge rushers, the kind of those next guys, and then especially an offensive line and receiver. And he's gone out there, been aggressive. He got the best free agent wide receiver available in the National Football League. It looks like he's done some things from an offensive line standpoint and adding some bodies. They look to be Tennessee Titan type guys. And so it remains to see how well of a job he has done. But right now, it's his rookie year. He's doing okay in his rookie year. He's doing all right.
Titans Talk back on WGFX FM, Gallatin, Nashville, 104.5 The Zone, presented by Lee Company. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play? Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. 615-737-1045, alongside Dr. Kevin Dyson. I'm Lucas Panzica as we break down the Titans' 24-16 victory in Week 2 of the NFL preseason at the Minnesota Vikings. They will return to Nashville, a couple of joint practices with the New England Patriots, and then wrap up the 2023 preseason against the Patriots here right down the road at Nissan Stadium. So the joint practices in Minnesota, KD, and then you'll go up against the Patriots at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. How do those joint practices? I know so many of those starters that get a lot of that work in don't end up playing in the preseason game. Yeah. But just overall, how do those practices kind of set the table for the preseason matchup? Does it add any sort of intensity? I mean, it was a physical night tonight in Minnesota.
Yes and no. Practices can be a little bit vanilla. It's just me against you, mano a mano in a lot of respects, right? You're keeping it pretty vanilla. You're not doing a whole lot of scheming. You do it a few blitzes from a defense perspective. You may do some slip screens from the offense perspective, slow that blitz down. You might do some stuff to get back because they snuck something in or maybe bumped you a little bit or hit your quarterback when you shouldn't have. So you do some things like that just from a competitive standpoint. But ultimately, you want mano a mano, man on man, see your guy compete against another guy from another team with a different look. And to see how your guys respond. You keep it pretty vanilla. Even a game, because you've been practicing each other 3-4 days, it really becomes, that's why I'm so impressed with the offensive line. It really becomes about man versus man, who wins the one-on-one battles in a lot of respects, because you have seen them for 3-4 days. They've watched film, extended film on you, then you don't normally get because you're practicing against them before the game, which you're also watching film preparing for. So there's that aspect of it, but it's pretty vanilla. The schemes are pretty vanilla. You try to sneak some things in here and there. You're not really scheming a dynamic pass play or thing like that. You're just kind of calling your offense and seeing how guys respond.
So as much as we talk about the offensive line tonight and 281 net rushing yards, the run blocking, how good it was across the board when it comes to depth, I guess in turn we have to talk about the running backs, right?
Yeah.
There's a fun little battle playing out in that room right now. And I suppose we can start with one guy that you know is going to be on this football team in 2023, the rookie out of Tulane, Tajay Spears. The 33-yard run, you mentioned it, the hurdle that should probably amount to an 8-9 yard scamper, ends up taking it to the house, and Spears finishes the night with 7 carries for 57 yards with that touchdown. I think Tajay Spears got a lot of Titans fans excited tonight for the way that he can complement Derrick Henry.
I think he's got everybody excited, man. It's just, you watch him, and like I said it last week, he's so decisive when he gets that pill in his hand, man. He's planting that foot. He's got good instincts. He's reading that front. He gets to the mesh point. He's cutting. He's hitting the holes. He's getting to the creases. And today, instinctually, when a guy nipping at your heels and to make that jump full speed and hit it running, man, he shows his ability. The interesting race will be that next guy, because you gotta wonder, okay, somebody's got to play special teams if you're gonna make this team. And none of them really have been on any of the special teams that I've noticed, or at least haven't made no plays if they are. I haven't really noticed them. So with that, which one of these guys can add depth in that regard too? So, but yeah, you're right. Spears is not going anywhere. He looks like a bona fide number 2 back in the National Football League, especially after Derrick Henry.
You just love the way he runs between the tackles.
Yeah, man.
Right? Because he's billed as this scat back almost, right?
No.
Which isn't what he was at Tulane. He did everything at Tulane. But the Titans have been trying to find that guy, right, to complement, to balance out Derrick Henry, whether it was Darrington Evans, Dontrell Hilliard at times.
Yeah.
But the way that Tyjae Spears can run it up the gut, can bounce it outside, catch passes out of the backfield, whether he's motioning in the backfield, just that sort of eye candy that this Titans offense hasn't had in a while.
Yeah.
He's a physical back.
You know, you watch him, and people can gawk at this if they want to. He's a bigger, more physical version of Sproles to me.
Darren Sproles.
Yeah. You know, kind of a jack of all trades, can run outside the tackle box. He runs pretty well inside tackle. He's not a big guy, but he's bigger than Sproles. And truth be told, I know Sproles had the return game that was kind of his element. He looks like he can do that as well, especially from a kickoffs perspective. Maybe not punts, but kickoffs. So that's another element. But he reminds me of that mode where you dump it off to him in screens. He can make a home run from that. Like he's kind of that mode of a backup type running back, and that's what you want. You want a guy who kind of complements your guy in the sense that he's going to keep the physicality, but he adds another element to the game that you really got to pay cognizant of. Like, here this guy come in, he runs well versus tackle, but we got to be mindful if he's one-on-one with our linebackers too. So it's going to be interesting to see how they integrate him into the offense as he gets more adept to the NFL game and to what the offense is actually trying to accomplish when they have all their pieces together.
Tennessee Backroad on the YouTube chat says, what ACLs? He don't need those. I am curious how you sort of received that news when it came out after Spears was drafted out of Tulane. Ian Rappaport out there talking about his health and, the ACL tears and arthritis in his knee, and Titans fans are just absolutely losing it.
It didn't look like it today.
No, and every time Tyjae Spears has been asked about it, he's been very short. He said, I'm healthy, and it's kind of, that's that.
Yeah.
I as somebody that has absolutely no expertise in things like this, KD, I've said can't tear an ACL if you don't have one. but there's no doubt Tyjae Spears has come in and feels like he's one of those guys that the rest of the NFL, not exactly paying to the Titans in the preseason, that they're going to see week one and they'll have forgotten about Tyjae Spears getting drafted in the third round out of Tulane and say, whoa, who's this cat in Tennessee? Complimenting Derrick Henry, getting all these carries.
I didn't even think about the whole knee thing. He doesn't look like it at all. And having somebody who has tore his knee up pretty bad and know how that feels, and to see him cutting, and I listen, they're still doing research and all this, and this artificial inside grass, turf versus natural grass, and how it grips cleats and cutting. And there is a difference. I'm sorry. And I preferred natural grass all day long. What they're using now is better than when I was coming up playing in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. That turf was terrible compared to the technology and things they're doing now. To think about him not having an ACL and playing on this surface and making the cuts and instinctually making that jump, that leap, while the guy's going low, if they had any concern, it's out the window now as soon as they watch this tape, guaranteed, because he looks as healthy as anybody in the game right now.
And I suppose where it gets interesting as far as the running back discussion goes is after Tyjae Spears and Derrick Henry, where Julius Chestnut continues to run hard, 13 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 7.5 yards per carry tonight in Minnesota, had a receiving touchdown, led this team in rushing. Jacques Patrick, the new signing in his preseason debut, 8 carries for 29 yards. Who didn't get a carry tonight, KD, was Hassan Haskins. And at what point do we start to wonder if Hassan Haskins, obviously there's a legal situation that still needs to play out, but at what point do we start to wonder if his place on this 53-man roster is pretty insecure?
I would say I don't remember him playing much last week either. I don't remember.
Let me pull up his. He was out there. He kick return game, got a few carries, but I'll pull up his numbers in Chicago.
Yeah, I remember him playing, but again, I was saying that kind of being facetious is I don't really remember him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's not popping off the page.
6 carries, 12 yards, and a touchdown in Chicago.
Yeah, That's right. He did have a touchdown. But he's still not popping out the page like Tajay is right now. He's standing out. You watch him on screen, you're like, oh, this is a player. And today, Chestnut in particular, he's a hard man to bring down. It'd be interesting to see what they do with him. Now, last year they kept 3 backs, I believe.
It was Derrick Henry, Dontrell Hilliard, and Hassan Haskins.
They kept 3. And then I see how they're using the tight ends more as that fullback / H-back.
Yeah, Kevin Rader probably going to be that guy.
So that means they'll probably keep an extra tight end than which they had in a few years. So we're really talking about 3 backs. So it's probably between Haskins and Chestnut, I would assume. Maybe Patrick, even though he's a late signing. And then maybe they're done with Haskins and it's between Patrick. I mean, the fact that he came in, he's been here, all of 2 days, and he got how many carries? 8 carries today?
29 yards.
20 yards. And he looked pretty good, too.
Yeah.
And they probably did 2 plays with him, and he looked pretty good. But again, that's hats off to the offensive line. So, really, if they're only keeping 3 running backs, I think his days are numbered anyway. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Julius Chestnut just continues to run angry, right? I mean, this is a guy that nobody gave a shot to make the Titans 53-man roster. Right. And he did this last year, KD.
Yeah.
I mean, out of Sacred Heart, the UDFA, just one of those guys that you kind of start to follow at training camp because he's such a cool story and has a great personality and just the effort and the physicality. But still one of those that you think, well, he's fun, glad he's here, but, not going to be a factor. And then roster cut day comes and goes in 2022, and Julius Chestnut's on this roster. And now here we are, preseason week 2, 2023, and he won't go away. He's still around.
He kind of reminds me of Garrett Blunt a little bit. Kind of low center of gravity, a little bigger. Maybe not a burner, blazer, but can run a little bit. As you saw today, he had a big run. But, he's a guy that I think, given the right circumstance, right opportunity, can be productive. And I think that's a lot with everybody in the NFL. I think everybody's talented to some degree, but there are certain fits that everybody has. There's 1 or 2, maybe 3 fits that everybody has, and he's just trying to find that fit. And it sometimes it don't take much. You just want to get opportunity. And if he gets opportunity, at least from my standpoint, these first couple games, it looks like he's ready to extend his role. And again, we all know sometimes a guy gets cut. It's just a numbers game. We just drafted this guy in the second round. You had a better preseason, but I just drafted him. I got to see what my investment is going to take me. And that's kind of where it is right now. But did he leapfrog people like Haskins, who has been here for a while? Has he leapfrogged them to now he's gotten that third role? So if something happens, he's a special teamer / now backup running back. So I love what he's doing right now. To me, again, it's a good problem to have when it's hard to make a decision on who to keep and who to cut because they are playing so well. But that's what makes a good football team there are hard decisions. You don't know who to cut because they are all playing so well. So you feel like we can't go wrong on what decision we make. We just got to make the right decision for what we have on our roster.
Good problems to have.
Good problem to have. And we haven't talked about it right now, but receiver-wise, especially with injury this week, I think we didn't even get to their play and the potential of who's going to be here. With the injury this week, and Traylon Burks, with his injury this week, and getting to the start season, which he'll be back. I get that, but it makes you sit there and think, okay, a starter goes down. Aside from Westbrook-Akine, as far as experience in that role, now and then Phillips today, whatever happened to him, and now you start thinking, okay, are we going to look outside to come in, or do we have what's in the locker room to fill these voids? Because when the injury happened, I immediately went to, okay, it's going to be Nick Westbrook-Akine. But then I'm saying he's kind of, at least from my perspective, he's not getting a whole lot of conversation talking about him media-wise, practice-wise. You're not hearing his name being called, plays being made. It's just kind of quiet on it. But you know what he brings to the table. You've seen him play. You know his ability. He's a stretch the field guy. He's long. He's started some games in the league, but you haven't heard much about him. So who are the next guys? Moore, he was out there again today, no catches today, but like you said last week, I think Vrabel loves him and what he's done.
Yeah, I think Chris Moore is as close to a lock to making this roster as any of these guys.
So would he be that fourth guy, 3-4? Probably. Because Phillips, I would assume, was going to be the third.
Right.
But more durable.
Yeah, Phillips leaving today with a knee injury on a punt return on what was a nice tackle by the Minnesota special teamer, not allowing Phillips to get past that first man, but leaving with that knee injury. Now, whether that's anything substantial, obviously would be cause for concern because the knock on him has been durability, or if that's just precautionary, take him out of there. We don't know. We'll see.
That's what you hope.
Right. We'll see what that looks like at training camp next week. But let's get into that conversation a little bit more. The injuries to Kyle Phillips, to Treylon Burks. What might that bring out in this wide receiver room with only one preseason game remaining, as well as the defensive side, KD? One guy that is making a really strong case
Avery?
To make this roster. I got somebody else in mind to get into that pass rushing rotation. We'll talk about it. I think you might know who I'm talking about. It's Titans Talk Back alongside Kevin Dyson, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com, 615-737-1045 to get in on the conversation as we discuss the Titans' 24-16 win in the preseason over the Minnesota Vikings. We'll be right back on Titans Talk Back, presented by Lee Company.
To throw it under pressure. Sacked! Caleb Murphy.
Coach Dave McGinnis said it on the broadcast. Mike Keith's sack call is in regular season form in the 2023 preseason. Got to use it 3 times tonight. Welcome back. It's Titans Talk back on 104.5 The Zone. Presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. 615-737-1045 if you want to react alongside myself, Lucas Panzica, and Dr. Kevin Dyson to the Titans preseason win at the Minnesota Vikings. It is time for the Kroger Sacks for Cash because tonight the Titans had 3 sacks, courtesy of undrafted rookie Caleb Murphy, who had 2, as you just heard one of them from Mike Keith's radio call, and Rashad Weaver, who had 1. For the season, Kroger's donation to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee now stands at $500, courtesy of those 3 sacks tonight. Every time the Titans sack the opposing team's quarterback, Kroger donates $100 to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee from Kroger through its Zero Hunger, Zero Waste plan. Kroger is committed to ending hunger in our communities. We were talking during the break, KD, about Caleb Murphy's ridiculous numbers at the college football level. D2 at Ferris State, broke some NCAA records anyway, 25.5 sacks in 2022, 39 TFLs in 2022, and he just keeps forcing us to say his name here throughout the course of the preseason.
You know, I don't care what level. In high school, that is remarkable. And at some point, you got to realize he's putting up these numbers, and people watch film. So it's not like he's probably, we're going to leave him one-on-one. He's probably getting double-teamed. He's probably getting the rotation of protection his way. I don't care at what level. And still be that productive tells you the kind of ability, D2 or not. He might be a late bloomer because a lot of times guys, sometimes you're a late bloomer, you're undersized in between positions. There's a guy that already maybe was more productive than you at one point or another. They signed him, a coach liked him, whatever. But a football player, and like I've told people before, they'll find you. They don't care where you're at. Somebody will find you if you can play. And right now, he's making a name for himself. And if nobody else, Minnesota got their eyes on him the way he played tonight. And so Titans let go. I'm sure he won't be on the waiver wire for long.
It'll be interesting. Samu Kawanu, who had a sack last week, had a penalty today when he kind of crashed the pocket on Nick Mullins and went high, right?
I don't even think he hit the head. I thought he hit the arm and it made it look like it, but
yeah, it's almost like if it even looks like you're halfway making contact with that helmet, they're going to throw the flag.
Yeah.
They're throwing the flag.
Those should be reviewable, but that's on me.
Harold Landry, Arden Key, Rashad Weaver are going to be on this football team in 2023. Samu Kawanu, Caleb Murphy kind of battling it out for those rotational pass rusher spots.
Ooh. And remember, I was saying that, like, who are going to be in. Last week, I was like, nobody really stood out. This week, it kind of stood out. Even though there's only 3 sacks, they were applying pressure. They were getting after him. That defensive line, they couldn't run the football. They weren't efficient. Now, they gave up some yards late, especially on that last drive there to get in the end zone in the fourth quarter there. But for the most part, that defensive line controlled the front. And again, I think if you talked about Vrabel and his mindset of having a physical football team that know their jobs, play physical and relentless, you have to be, as a head coach, happy of what you saw today, considering you had practice against them all week for multiple days and played them, and you still came out and dominated that team probably in a vanilla scheme. So it really was my man versus your man, and who's going to win this battle. And I feel like guys like Caleb Murphy won their individual one-on-one battles today. And that bodes well for adding depth going into the season.
So if you're Caleb Murphy and you've had a pretty good first couple of weeks of the preseason, and obviously there's a lot of work being done before that throughout the course of the early portion of training camp, how big is this next week for Caleb Murphy to finish strong, joint practice against the Patriots, one more preseason game, your first game at Nissan Stadium for the Tennessee Titans? I mean, what must be going through his mind as he gets ready for this last week?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I'm fortunate I haven't been in that situation.
Right.
But so and I'm trying to put myself in that mindset. All I could think of is I'm talking to my agent, and I'm saying, what's the whispers? Are there other teams that are like, hey, the Titans release me, am I coming? Whatever. But I'm also at the same time, I got to stay focused on my opportunity that's in front of me. Because you focus on those other opportunities, you're going to miss out on the one that's right in front of you, and you might miss it. And so if I'm putting myself in his mind frame, I'm thinking, I got nothing to lose. I'm playing with house money. So I just need to know my job and play hard and don't make the mistakes and make the plays that are in front of me. And if I don't make this team, I think I've done enough to give myself an opportunity with somebody else. And I believe he has, just on the small sample size, right? And with that being said, only thing you can control, especially in professional sports, is yourself. You can't control what the guy next to you doing, the guy that you got to go against is doing. I can't control what that GM, that president, and the head coach are thinking. Only thing I can do is make it hard for them to make a decision to be without me. And after that, if they find it without me, oh well, I'm going to go do it for somebody else. That's kind of the mindset you got to have.
Speaking of making decisions tough, Kearis Jackson is trying to be one of those guys throughout the course of
another one.
Training camp. 615-737-1045 if you want to join the conversations. Titans winners in week 2 of the NFL preseason, 24-16 in Minnesota. And Kearis Jackson getting opportunities in the kick return game. We saw, I don't have it in front of me, but like 4 different kick returners last week in Chicago. Kearis Jackson returns 2 kickoffs this evening in Minnesota for a total of 48 yards, a long of 33. The unfortunate ending for Jackson was he walks off with trainers, heads to the blue tent, leaves the game with a knee injury, like Kyle Phillips. So that's 1, 2, 3 Titans receivers that have to leave in some capacity this week. Traylon Burks a couple of days ago, although that turned out to be, in Mike Vrabel's words, best case scenario. After the MRI, LCL sprain, out for a few weeks is all we know. They haven't given us a timetable, but you feel optimistic, right, about Burks' ability to be back week 1, week 2 in that range.
Yeah.
At least to where you don't have to put him on IR.
Yeah.
But Kyle Phillips leaves after his first punt return of the day. Kearis Jackson leaves after doing some good things today. And we went into the break in the last segment talking about this wide receiver room. Who steps up now with those reps being made available with Burks out? The unfortunate thing is some of those guys are having to be held back due to injury.
Yeah. And I keep looking at that depth of wide receivers, and it's just like it's a bunch of guys that's kind of the same.
Yeah.
And what I mean is nobody's really has taken the reins and say, this is my spot. They kind of all doing the same thing, and unfortunately one of them get hurt or something to that effect. Nobody's really has stood out from a game's perspective. Now, I'm not there every practice, not watching all the film, not grading the film. I know you have mentioned Vrabel and his love for Moore. We know what Westbrook-Akine has done for this franchise the last few years. And then I think the excitement behind Phillips is that light dimming with everybody a little bit because of the injuries, and he hasn't really had the same sparkle he had last year as far as the excitement he brought with his potential to be that third guy, to move the chains, converting third downs, the change of pace guy, the little shifty guy. You haven't really gotten that same sparkle, if you will, as we had last year at this point in the year. Now he's out for who knows, hopefully not very long, because I think he can add to this depth anyway, just because he does have that shiftiness to him, that one-on-one in the slot, small space type of guy. But other than that, Jackson, it's unfortunate because he's a guy I feel like needs every rep he can to solidify a spot. I'm still on the fence of, do they keep 5 or 6 guys? I lean towards they're only going to keep 5, which leaves a guy like Jackson on the outside looking in, I think, just because I think you go Westbrook-Akine, Moore, Phillips if healthy, and then, of course, your big 2. And so after that, if they go 6, that's when the battle becomes interesting, I think, if you go with 6. But I think they only go with 5. I think they go with the extra tight end because no fullback. I think you maybe go with an extra offensive lineman for depth purposes, especially with the suspension. Let's see, secondary-wise, That's also going to be a big number. D linemen, as we talked about a minute ago, the depth of pass rushers, edge rushers. You got 2, 3 that are pretty good. Who's that fourth? Maybe a fifth guy that can come off the edge that can also play special teams. Interior linebacker. That's a battle right there in itself. So it's going to be interesting how they start shaping this roster. I think you're only going to have to be able to keep 5 receivers then.
Titans Talk Back presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. 615-737-1045 for you to join the discussion. We've talked about, in regards to the wide receiver room and how many you keep, how the quarterback decision could impact that, right? 3 quarterbacks, it looks like it's trending that way. That's going to take away from somewhere. Yeah. Did today feel like just another step towards 3 quarterbacks on this 53-man roster with Levis not even getting the opportunity due to injury?
I think after last week, I think that's almost a foregone conclusion. I think they're going to – I mean, there's no way you put either one of them on the practice squad or waivers or anything, they won't last long. I think they both have enough talent that somebody's going to take a chance with them. I don't even know who the backup is, and so say somewhere like Denver. I could see either one of them being scooped up by somebody like Denver.
Who is the backup in Denver?
Exactly.
The answer is Jarrett Stidham. Stidham and Ben DiNucci are over there behind Russ, who started again today, by the way, for the Broncos.
And Stidham is not a bad little backup, but I don't know how he is with Peyton's offense and things of that nature. But again, to your point, it'd be hard unless you're just okay with one of them going. And which one of those are you? You spent draft capital on both of them. Now, it wasn't this administration's draft capital when you talk in regards to Malik. So, is there an emotional tie to him as much as it is with Grant and Levis, because that's his pick?
Yeah.
So that's something to consider, but I just don't think you can. I think you're going to end up with 3 quarterbacks, which has been rare of the last recent history with NFL. Most guys are keeping 2 and having a third on the practice squad.
Well, and to bring it back to Malik, then we understand Malik is the backup quarterback right now, right? That was the case going into training camp. That was the case after Chicago, and that certainly is the case today with Levis not even getting the opportunity to take any snaps in Minnesota. Do you feel like Malik did enough to continue to distance himself today, or are we kind of standing pat in that regard?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think towards the end of the game, he solidified a little bit more for me because of the way he had command of the offense and sealed the deal for the game. I still see some things that he needs to work on from an accuracy standpoint, a footwork standpoint, but he is a playmaker. His legs, his speed, his ability to navigate the pocket, that's still good. I think he just has some fundamental things he needs to work on. So with that being said, thinking about Levis and his progression as a rookie and understanding defenses and knowing how that transition can be, you give Willis the nod because you can tell the maturation process from his rookie year to his second year and being more comfortable within the scheme of the offense. He just has some things he's got to continue to make an emphasis on getting better, from my opinion, especially with his footwork. And then I go back to what I said earlier. It's hard to win a job because the guy you're competing against is not able to compete against you. You almost hate that, not really bad because you still want a job too, but you almost hate that I win the job by default because this guy got hurt. Because, it's a short time in the NFL. You want to play as long as you can and everything else. But I also like to win the battle because of what I did on the field. I want to say, yeah, you earned the right to be in this spot because of how you played. And I don't want to, if I'm battling, I don't want to go out and win a battle just because this guy couldn't go against me. So if he's able to play next week, him being Levis, able to play next week, I think the interesting thing will be does he get the lion's share of the reps to counterbalance what Malik was able to do today as far as the whole game aspect of it, just to have a true sample size between the two of them and make that assessment and say, okay, Malik is this much ahead, is the number 2, will continue to develop Levis for the future, whereas right now I would assume Malik is number 2. But I want to ask you this, and even the people listening or here on social media, Malik could be the number 2 this year, but in the long term, who do you see as starter in the NFL? Is it Malik or is it Levis? And I think that's where the Titans are. I think regardless of if Malik is still ahead of him right now, do they view him as the long-term replacement for Tannehill in year one, in 1 or 2, maybe 3 years from now? And I think that's going to be determination, whether it be this year or next, as to who they believe is the long-term answer for this franchise.
It's a great question.
Potentially.
Yeah. The current GM picked Will Levis. Yeah. The former GM picked Malik Willis.
Exactly.
Again, we talked about it last week, though, right? KD, all the credit to Malik Willis for staying in this fight and for making this a conversation right now.
Yeah.
Because it is so tangible, the improvement that he's taken from year 1 to year 2. Even just running the football, which he did a nice job of today, 11 carries, 91 yards. Just from my perspective, does it feel like he's getting more north-south than maybe he was when we watched him a year ago, when he's doing some of the things you saw that he had the luxury of doing at Liberty, of dancing around and going more sideline to sideline, trying to angle around guys versus just getting downfield?
I thought he did a good job with that even last year, too. I just think what I'm seeing this, at least in the preseason, at least today, is more decisive. And, I think last week he seemed to want to make a point of, I can sit in this pocket, and then try to escape. And then, like you said, getting around, running around, trying to make plays. Whereas today it was read, go. He was more decisive in his decision-making. But that's where I am proud of his growth as a player. You can tell he's more comfortable within himself and his skin and his offense, where he does have that look of confidence as far as his ability to read the field and feeling confident in his decision to run if nothing's there from his perspective. I think the biggest thing for him, again, I go back to the same point, is his fundamentals and technique at time get him in trouble. The pick today was a prime example of that.
Yeah, it just wasn't there.
It wasn't
right?
there. And his feet were, and his hips were almost opposite to where his arm and his release point was, so that ball kind of tailored off on him. And so if you think that in, like, say, golfing terms, right, it's like leaving your hips open, and you inadvertently that ball's going to slice, whether you have them super open or not, it's going to slice a little bit. And that's kind of how that ball floated on him and able to make that pick, because he didn't have that drive in his shoulders. Now, you could say the rushers in front of him, he couldn't really lean forward on that front foot. But that's where the veteran, like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, the guys, they would have felt that slid just a step and then, boom, delivered that ball. And that's where playing time and experience comes in. And to your point of being in a more college-friendly offense comparative to playing the pro game. But with that also, I think he seems right now, and again, we're comparing him to Levis, more comfortable with the pro game. But we got a small sample size, at least from my perspective, a small sample size of Levis. I just think when you compare those two and their ability and looking from a decision-maker process, who is the guy of the future and who's just a backup? And that's kind of where I say, okay, well, if Levis is your guy of the future, then make him your backup now, because you got to give him the opportunity. He's got to learn, he's got whatever. But if it's not determined who's going to be the quarterback of the future, then I think Malik is definitely ahead of him right now. He's got that year of experience. There's nothing that replaces the experience unless you're just that much more talented. And I didn't see anything that says Levis is that much more talented than Malik, or Malik is that much more talented than Levis. So it's going to be interesting to see what they put the importance on. And if they're saying, 'cause to me, if you based on where both of them were drafted, based on the time that's been invested in both of them, who you make your backup speaks volumes. It's not necessarily developing for the future, or is it developing for the future and saying, oh, this is our guy that's going to be after Tannehill? Because you got 2 high draft picks, and both of them, in similar stories, didn't they both of them have first-round grades? And we're supposed to be first-round picks?
Right. So, yes. The answer is yes. Malik Willis coming out alongside Kenny Pickett, right? I guess in hindsight and in the moment viewed as a quote-unquote weaker quarterback class where Pickett is the only first-round QB taken, 20th overall. Yeah, Malik was thought to have first-round traits. The rest of the NFL told you what they thought about that as he falls to the 3rd round. And Levis was talked about as a potential top 5 pick.
Right.
Yeah.
And saying, but they're still talented to even be in those conversations, right? So, and again, like year to year, the talent pool might be a little bit different. As you mentioned, Pickett, who's now a starter and projected to have a pretty solid year in Pittsburgh. But again, they both were super talented for a reason and got picked high for a reason. I just don't know which one I would view as the quarterback of the future. And I said this last year, and I think I mentioned this to you last week. Malik reminds me a lot of Mac 9. He's not as big as McNair, but he reminds me a little bit of him. Mac fundamentally was a little bit better, but he was just an ultimate competitor, found ways to win, and then he progressed as a professional football passer. He always could throw the football. He set all the NCAA records. We always knew he can throw, but he progressed as an NFL quarterback in his ability to throw, on top of his ability to make plays with his legs. And I'm not saying Malik is there yet, but he reminds me of Mac in his ability to make plays with his legs. He's just got to get the accuracy and the confidence in his reads down a little sooner, a little better, and I think he can be a pretty solid quarterback. I just don't know enough about Levis. I saw him play in college, and he was a good football player, and I think he was worthy of the pick he was. I just don't know enough about him in the pro game yet. You just don't know until he's put in that situation. Preseason is one thing, but we saw that. Remember how well, Malik got out there and we're like, ooh, it was a struggle.
Moving fast.
Yeah, it was a different game, and so we just don't know. I just hadn't seen enough of Levis to be like, yeah, he's the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
And Vrabel's he's a smart guy. He's been around a lot of football, and I know he's one of those guys. I want to see it on the field. I want to see how the guys respond to you in the huddle. I want to see how you are in a situation like today, 4-minute drill. That's why I think it was such a good thing. You mentioned it last week of they both got opportunity with 2-minute drill last week.
At the end of each half.
At the end of each half, and they both got opportunity to show how they could lead their team down the field and what that was going to look like, and it was kind of equitable. Well, today we got to see what Malik did in a game where we needed a first down to seal the deal, and he had a command of the offense, and he had the huddle, everybody's listening in, and he had the big long run, and boom, now we're taking a knee. So I hope Levis plays next week for our sake as fans, so we can feel comfortable with whatever decision is made, because there's going to be those like we should go with Levis, as we can probably read it right now. Levis is the guy. They're going to say Malik is the guy, and I don't know if anybody that's a Titans fan feel comfortable with either right now saying they won the job, so to speak. But I don't think anybody's uncomfortable with either one of them winning the job either, because they know they're both young and they both have ability to be in the National Football League, obviously.
Titans win 24-16 at the Minnesota Vikings in the second preseason game of 2023. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They'll be back in that home stadium next week for the final preseason outing against the Patriots. Lee Company can protect your home, too. Your next play, visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need, 615-737-1045. Your phone calls when we return and wrap things up. And to look ahead, what starters do you want to see in the preseason finale against the New England Patriots a week from yesterday at Nissan Stadium? Dylan coming to you next. Dylan in Antioch. On the other side, it's Titans Talk Back, presented by Lee Company on 104.5 The Zone. It's Titans Talk back on 104.5 The Zone after the Tennessee Titans go up to Minnesota following a week of joint practice and win 24-16. We are presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Alongside Titans legend Kevin Dyson, I'm Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams, our producer. 615-737-1045. Your final opportunity to get into the conversation here. A lot of talk about Malik Willis, about the rushing attack today. Titans racking up 281 rush yards behind an offensive line that trotted out the first team for the first three drives, and then the second and third took it the rest of the way. A quick look around the rest of the league, KD, here in preseason week 2. I did want to get your thoughts on this really quickly before we wrap up. A lot of starting quarterbacks that played today around the NFL. Daniel Jones, Desmond Ridder still trying to get those reps, and that's not even including Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Kenny Pickett up in Pittsburgh. But the Indianapolis Colts, after naming Anthony Richardson their starter this week officially, do not play Anthony Richardson today. Gardner Minshew gets the start at home against the Bears. I guess that puzzled me a little bit for a guy that comes into the NFL with 13 career starts and you feel like could use all the reps he could get.
That one, I mean, the rookie needs reps. I mean, based on the sample size we saw the other day, and I don't know the philosophy of the NFL and some organizations, as you mentioned earlier, we've seen several NFL starting quarterbacks get some reps today, starting reps today in the preseason games. I think, again, if I was a coach, now GM, I would play, especially a rookie who I drafted high. I got to play him every rep I can. He needs to see NFL speed as much as possible. As I mentioned last week, you see a lot of guys, especially rookies, with the 11 completions for 28 attempts for 76 yards. Because they don't want to make mistakes, so they're just dumping it off, and they're dumping. They're not really making plays. They don't understand the throwing a guy open and things of that nature. And eventually they get over that and they have good games and they start progressing along, get better and better. But there's a growth process, a maturation process that comes with playing quarterback, in my opinion, that you can't replace with nothing else but experience. You can watch film, you can do all these things. But you got to be out there and feel that speed and feel what's going on and watch how guys move. It's different the last 2 years or so and how they've done the preseason and not playing starters at all. But they're picking up these inter squad scrimmages. They're coming up. They're glorified like scrimmages, almost like preseason games because they're so competitive in a practice form. And now you're doing it with not just one team, you're doing it with two different teams. So it's almost like I don't need my starters. They're getting the competitive reps they need on a day-to-day basis as opposed to just one day in the week. And so I don't know. I don't know which way I would have preferred. I just know I used to love my reps. Now they're still not getting hit. Nobody's going goal line full speed, running up on somebody's legs like they would in a game type thing. But I wanted to get banged a little bit in the game and just somebody hit me and pop up and, okay, I'm alive and let's go, that sort of thing.
By the way, the other big headline around the NFL here in preseason week 2, really quick, Patriots and Packers. That game at Lambeau Field was suspended early in the fourth quarter after rookie Patriots cornerback Isaiah Bolden took a hit from a teammate during a play that led to him being immobilized. This is straight from ESPN.
Oh, man.
Placed on a stretcher and carted off. They said he did have feeling in all his extremities, but was taken to a local hospital for further tests and observations, and the Patriots tweeted out that he'll be held overnight at a local hospital in Green Bay, and they will plan to provide an update on his condition by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So all the best to Isaiah Bolden. Definitely the right decision to suspend that game. About 10 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter.
As you say that, and I'm over here, I like for my starters to play.
Oh, yeah, no, that was bad timing by me. Yeah, I put you in a bad spot on that one.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? It's not that important after all.
And I suppose to close out tonight, maybe this is about the worst transition. Mickey would be ashamed of me, the master of these transitions. Thank you, Jackson, for your applause on the other side of the glass. But real quick, KD, kind of up against it. Is there a starter that you would like to see against New England that we have not seen to this point in the preseason? We saw Chigakonkwo today, dropped a pass over the middle, had one catch for 19 yards. But is there one guy in particular that you're just thinking, man, I'd really just like to see a few snaps out of that guy?
Not in the third preseason game. Early, I would have. Now I'm like, just get healthy and get to the regular season. I would have liked to see Traylon Burks. If you'd asked me that last week, he would have been the one I wanted to see, just because I want to see his maturation from year one and year two, his confidence level, everything I've seen of him on tape and practices. He looks like he's ready to take that next step. He's getting great separation. He's able to catch the ball, jump balls, use his size. But I want to see what he's like running after catch and using that body, using that frame. That would have been who I would have wanted to see. But this final preseason game, it's about getting out healthy and solidifying that next roster spot. Like spot 20, I'm going to say 25 starter spots because of kicker, long snapper, and punter. So from 26 to 60, whatever, that's what this last preseason game is about. Who are those guys? And we know a few, like Tajay Spears is on there. We know a few guys. But after that, who are these spots going to? And that's what's going to be. That's what this was for. So right now, I'm good with the starters not playing on Friday night.
It's a 7 o'clock kickoff next Friday night at Nissan Stadium. The Tennessee Titans hosting the New England Patriots to close out the 2023 NFL preseason following a week of joint practice at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. We'll be out there broadcasting live, myself and Buck Rising on the Buck Rising Show on those days, so be sure to tune in to that from 10 to 1 p.m. But until then, Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff hits the air at 4 p.m. next Friday. Titans Countdown at 6. Kickoff with Mike Keith, Coach Mack, and the rest of that crew at 7. And then Kevin Dyson and I will be right back here chatting with you about it on the Lee Company Titans Talkback. Lee Company, all you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Titans win 24-16 in Minnesota. Titans radio coverage is produced by Philip Noel and Brad Willis. Studio producer is Joseph Hunkapiller. The promotions director is Rich Ferris. Director of sales, Hunter Rice. General manager is Allison Warren. The operations managers, Charlie Cook and Paul Mason. And the executive producer of Titans radio is Rhett Bryant. For Dr. Kevin Dyson, our producer Jackson Williams, I'm Lucas Panzica saying goodnight, and we'll talk to you next week on Titans Talkback.